Are you calling a witness now?
They would call Joel Kennedy.
All right. Mr. Kennedy, if you'd please come up to the witness stand. Once you step up onto the platform, if you'd please raise your right hand to be placed under oath.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Joel Kennedy, Joelkennedy.
Thank you.
Thank you. What we're going to allow you to do, Mr. Kennedy, is testify with your mask removed and then wearing a face shield. Thank you. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do, Mr. Kennedy, is that black box that's in front of you with the red light, that's the microphone. If you can kind of move your chair up so that you're basically touching the counter, because if your shield is kind of over top of the microphone, it picks your voice up better. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
Mr. Kennedy, can you tell us how old you are?
26?
And are you from the Green Bay area originally?
No.
Where are you from?
Milwaukee?
And do you live in that area now?
Yes.
At some point in time, you were residing up in the Green Bay area, is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell us how that came about?
An ex of mine?
And that's not Sabrina?
No.
Okay. At some point in time, did you meet a person by the name of Sabrina Teague?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us how that happened?
Meet me?
And did you start a relationship with her?
Yes.
Do you know about what time, what year you began that relationship with Sabrina?
December 2015?
And how did your relationship progress with Sabrina?
It went really well, and we were trying to get everything set up and start life together.
So you dated her?
Yes.
And at some point in time, did you live with Sabrina?
Yes.
When did that happen?
About a month after we got together.
And where did you live with her?
With her in her house.
And do you know the address of that house?
1368 Riverdale Drive.
Who else lived there with you?
Her mother.
And what was her mother's name?
Heesun.
Did she have a nickname? Her
Sonny.
mother? Sonny? Is that what everybody called her, Sonny?
Yes.
You too?
Yes.
And you said that shortly after you were dating, you were living with her, everything was going pretty well in your relationship?
Yes.
Joel, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 1B1. Turn up to the... Can you see it on this screen in front of you here?
Just so the jury knows, whatever is being projected on the large drop-down screen is also showing on the TV screen that's in front of myself, and the court reporter and the witness can see that as well. It's in front of defense counsel table. Are you able to see the TV screen in front of you, Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Kennedy, can you identify what's in that photograph?
That is the house?
That's the house where you resided with Sabrina and Sonny Teague.
Yes.
And were you living there in June of 2016?
Yes.
Were you working at that time?
Yes.
Where were you working?
Burger King.
Do you know about the date range of your employment with that Burger King?
January, I believe, until July or August.
Is that January 2016?
2015. No, yes, 2016, sorry.
Did you start Burger King before or after you started dating Sabrina?
After.
All right. So January of 2016. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how long had you resided at that 1368 residence?
About 6 months.
During your time living there, had you ever seen or known a person by the name of Jacob Cayer to be at that house?
No.
Joel, I'm going to direct your attention specifically to June 7th of 2016. Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Were you living in the 1368 Riverdale Drive residence at that time?
Yes.
Had you moved out or lived at a different residence at all kind of immediately prior to that?
Yes, I did.
Where were you living immediately kind of prior to that? And what's the time frame?
With a friend, and for a couple months.
So is that in like the spring of 2016?
No, that would be before. Winter 2015.
Oh, okay. So this is before you moved into the residence entirely?
Yes.
Okay. And then once you moved into 1368, you were living there essentially continuously until June 7th of 2016?
Yes.
On June 7th, 2016, do you recall what time you left the house that day?
I believe it was 12 or 1 p.m.
And where were you headed at that time?
Work.
And that is the Burger King?
Yes.
Where was that Burger King located?
In Howard.
And so when you went to work, 12 or 1, how long were you supposed to work that day?
I believe I was supposed to be there until 9 or 10.
How did you get to work?
Sabrina drove me.
Did you have a car at that time?
No.
Was it typical for Sabrina to bring you to and from work?
Yes.
And you think you were supposed to work until about 9 p.m. that night?
Yes.
Did you end up working until 9 p.m.?
No, I was released early.
Is that typical that you would occasionally get released early?
No.
Do you know what the reason was in that particular day?
No.
Did you have plans after work that night?
Yes, we were going to have a friend come over and watch some TV and movies.
And when you say we, you mean you and Sabrina?
Yes.
Do you know what either Sabrina and Sonny's plans were for that day?
No, I do not.
Was Sabrina working at that time?
I believe so.
Where was she working?
Perkins.
You know if Sonny had a job?
I do not think so.
So what time did you actually get off of work that day?
I believe 7:30.
And how did you leave work that day?
Sabrina picked me up.
And what car was Sabrina driving?
Her vehicle.
What kind of car was that? Do you remember?
Chevy Cobalt.
I'm going to direct your attention back to Exhibit 1B1. Do you see that vehicle in the photograph?
Yes.
There's only one vehicle in the photograph, is that fair to say?
Yes.
All right, so it's the vehicle parked in the driveway?
Yes.
Where did you go after Sabrina picked you up from work?
We went to Walmart to grab some food.
To grab some what?
To grab some food.
Did you pick up any other items while you were there?
I don't believe so.
Do you know about what time you left Walmart?
7:45.
And what happened after you left Walmart?
We went home.
So and did you go anywhere else in between, from leaving work, Walmart, and then home?
No.
And do you know about what time you got back to 1368 Riverdale Drive?
About 7:50, 8.
7:50 or 8?
Yes.
When you arrived home, where did she park the car?
In the driveway, right in front of the garage door.
So is it consistent with the photograph that's being displayed that we previously addressed?
Yes.
Is that typically where Sabrina would park?
Yes.
Did Sonny have a vehicle?
Yes.
What kind of vehicle was that?
Gray Chevy HHR?
When you arrived home, was that vehicle at the residence?
Yes.
Where was it?
In the garage,
Do you know which stall of those 3 stalls?
the middle stall.
And you think that vehicle was in the middle stall when you arrived?
Yes.
Were there any other vehicles on scene that you observed?
No.
I'm going to ask you if you can recall specifically how you entered the home that night.
He went in through the garage and the side door to the garage.
So you walked in the garage door, and then is there an entryway from the garage into the home?
Yes.
And that's the entryway that you took?
Yes.
Was that typical?
Yes.
Did you utilize the front door often?
No.
When you arrived through the garage, did you notice anything unusual upon entering the residence?
Yes, there was a bottle of water spilled on the floor.
Well, I'm going to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 1B2. It's another photograph, and I'm going to ask you to identify that photograph.
I'm going to interrupt for a moment just because I want to ask the jury if they can see clearly. It seems like when I turn off another light, you can see the screen much more clearly, but I don't know then if you can see the witness well enough. So I don't know if I should keep turning the light on and off, leave the light on, or leave it off. If you want me to leave it off, raise your hand. All right, so if I turn the light off and leave it off and at some point you need me to turn it back on, just raise your hand, all right? All right, go ahead, Mr. Lisay.
Joel, I'm going to ask you to identify what you see in this photograph, which is 1B2.
That is the garage entrance.
You'll notice on that garage entrance there appears to be quite a lot of chaos, blood evidence, things of that nature. Was that there when you arrived at the residence?
Objection, reading, Your Honor.
Can you rephrase the question?
There appear to be a lot of stains on the floor. There's a shovel tipped over. There are stains on the wall. Did you observe those stains and the shovel on the floor when you first entered the residence?
No.
So I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 1B3. Can you identify that photograph?
Yes, that is the kitchen and dining room.
Of the residence at 1368?
Yes.
And there's a door in the back in the middle of that. Can you identify what that door is?
That leads to the laundry room.
And then there's a door to the right of that. What is that door?
That is the garage door.
And is that the door that you entered when you came into the house that evening on June 7th?
Yes.
Do you recall if the door to the laundry room was open or closed when you arrived?
Closed.
What kind of door is the door to the laundry room?
Sliding door.
Is it typical for that door to be closed?
No.
Did you notice it when you initially came in the residence that it was closed?
No.
You'll also see some staining on the floor and what appears to be some disruption throughout the kitchen. Do you know, was that staining present when you initially entered the residence that night?
No.
So you did not see any staining on the floor when you first came in?
No.
So what happened then after you entered the residence?
What do you mean?
So what happened? I think you said you observed some water spilled on the floor. So then what happened?
The shower was running, and Sabrina went to go check on her mother and found her in the bathroom, and there were stains all over the floor. And then that is when he came out of the laundry room and attacked.
Did you go over to the bathroom to look to see what was in there at that time?
No, I did not.
I'm showing you, drawing your attention back to this photograph. That appears to be a kitchen island. Is that accurate?
Yes.
When you came in, where did you go?
I was on the other side of the island.
When you say the other side of the island, are you talking about the side where the table and chairs are, or the other side?
The other side.
And where did Sabrina go oriented on this photograph?
The side with the table and chairs.
Showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 1B4. Can you describe what's in that photograph?
That is the fridge and the laundry room at the house.
There appears to be staining on the floor and the wall and on the refrigerator. Was that staining present when you entered the residence?
No.
And Joel, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 1B5. Can you identify that photograph and what it depicts?
That is the kitchen and the island.
Can you see the bathroom where Heesun was located in this photograph?
Yes.
And where is it on the photograph?
By the stairwell.
And which direction from the stairwell is it?
Towards the right.
Towards the right? So can you see into the bathroom very well in this photograph?
No.
So when you say that Sabrina went to go check on her mom, where did she go? Were you able to see the area where Sabrina went on this photograph?
Yes.
Can you describe that for the jury in a little more detail?
She went back towards the back of the house on the stairwell, and then right there in the bathroom was right in front of the...
After Sabrina looked into that bathroom, what did Sabrina do?
She said, "Oh my God, Mom," and then opened her phone to call 911.
And did she stay in that area, or did she move at all?
She started walking back towards the door.
Towards the door that you had entered?
Yes.
And where are you while that is happening?
Standing by the island still.
On this photograph, the left or the right of the island?
Left.
There is some, what appears to be staining on the floor on the left side of the island. Was that staining present when you entered the home that day?
No.
So what happened after Sabrina said, "Oh my God," pulled out her phone, and then started walking toward your direction?
And he walked out of the laundry room and proceeded to attack us.
When you say he, who are you talking about?
Cayer.
And do you know his first name?
Jacob.
At this point, Your Honor, I'm going to ask if Mr. Kennedy can identify the individual who he knows as Jacob Cayer. Before Mr. Kennedy makes any identification, I'm going to ask that all of the members at council table and people in the first row remove their masks. Once everyone's mask is removed, Joel, I'm going to ask you if you see the person who you know as Jacob in court here today.
Yes, I do.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Do you see him?
Yes, I do.
Could you indicate for the record where he is seated and what he is wearing?
There in a gray shirt.
I would ask the record reflect that he has identified the defendant.
The record will so reflect, and just for the record, when Mr. Kennedy said there, he pointed, I believe it was with his right hand, to the right, to defense counsel table. And so are you indicating you're pointing out the third person to the right on
Yes.
that table? All right, thank you. I'll also note for the record that 13 people removed their masks at that time. And now we'll all put their masks back on. Most already have. Thank you.
Do you recall who Mr. Cayer attacked first, you or Sabrina?
Sabrina.
And where was she located when Mr. Cayer attacked her?
On the other side of the island, by the chairs.
Do you know what he used to attack either of you?
A kitchen knife.
Could you see the knife in his hand?
Yes.
Do you know what hand it was in?
Right, I believe.
And did you actually see Mr. Cayer stab Sabrina?
Yes.
And you indicated that he attacked you as well. Do you know when that happened in relation to when he attacked Sabrina?
I believe he went after her first and then came over to attack me.
When he attacked you, where were you?
I was still standing on the other side of the island.
Were you standing roughly in the location where the staining is located?
Yes.
You said Sabrina had her phone out. What happened with the phone?
I believe he slapped it out of her hand.
And do you know if she actually successfully called 911?
I do not think so.
When Mr. Cayer attacked you, what happened?
I was standing by the island and he walked up and went to stab me, and then I put my arm up and the blade went through my arm and into my chest. And then I fell back and started kicking at him and punching.
And what did he do at that point when you started kicking at him and punching him?
I believe he kind of walked away and started going after Sabrina again.
What did you do?
I went out into the garage.
Through the same door that you had entered?
Yes.
What did you do when you got to the garage?
I went and I grabbed a shovel
And once you grabbed the shovel, where did you go to grab the shovel in the garage?
on the other side of the garage.
That garage, when we looked in Exhibit 1B1, we could see that the garage has 3 stalls.
Yes.
Orienting from that photograph, what location of the garage was the shovel found in? I'll bring that photograph back up for you here.
The furthest right stall.
So the shovel was near there?
Yes.
So you ran across the entire garage to get it?
Yes.
When you grabbed that shovel, what did you do then?
They were following me out into the garage, fighting the entire time, and then I struck him, Cayer, with the shovel.
Where did you strike him?
I believe in the face.
And what happened then?
They fell down, and I ran inside the house and locked the doors and called 911.
And when you called 911, where were Jacob and Sabrina?
In the garage still.
Do you know if they were standing or if they were on the ground or where they were?
I don't recall.
Do you know if Mr. Cayer still had the knife?
I believe so.
What were your emotions like at that time?
Fear. Terrified.
Joel, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 1B6. Can you identify what that photograph depicts?
That is the hallway leading to the bathroom and the bedrooms.
And is that where you headed after you closed the door to the garage?
Yes.
There is looks like a railing on the left. Where does that staircase go?
That leads to the basement.
What's in the basement?
That was mine and Sabrina's room and storage.
There's a door on the right in this photograph. What is in the door on the right?
That would be the bathroom.
Did you look in that bathroom on your way back to Heesun's bedroom?
Yes.
What did you see?
I saw a body wrapped in a blanket and stains all over the floor.
Did you spend much time going in that bathroom and looking with any
No.
specificity? Could you see who it was?
No.
Did you make an assumption in your mind about who it was?
Yes.
And who did you believe it to be?
Heesun.
So the doorway all the way at the end of the hall, what is that doorway?
That is the door to Heesun's room.
Is that where you went?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as 1B7. What is depicted in this photograph?
Heesun's room.
There's a door immediately to the right. Do you know what that door is?
I believe that is a closet.
And then there's a door in the back on the right, a doorway that you can see. Where does that doorway lead to?
That is the bathroom.
And is that where you went?
Yes.
When you came in through the garage, do you remember if you locked the garage door?
I don't believe I did.
When you came into Heesun's bedroom, do you remember if you locked that door?
Yes, I did.
And when you came into the bathroom, Heesun's bathroom, did you lock that door as well?
Yes.
What did you do when you got into the bathroom?
I grabbed a towel to wrap up my arm and called 911.
And did you just stay in the bathroom then, Ken, while you were on the phone with 911?
Yes.
Do you recall where in that bathroom you were standing?
Up against the door.
How was your body positioned?
I had my back up against the door and I was standing.
While you were in the bathroom, do you recall if anybody else came into the house?
Yes.
What do you recall?
I believe that Cayer came back inside and tried to get into the bathroom.
How do you know that?
Because I could hear him outside of the door.
You know for sure it was him?
No.
But you suspected it was him?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 1B8. Can you identify what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, that is the bathroom.
There is what appears to be some staining on the floor of the bathroom. Did you observe that staining on the floor of the bathroom before you entered the room?
No.
Based on where you were standing and the nature of your injury, do you believe that staining came from your injury?
Yes.
And is that staining consistent with where you were standing in the bathroom?
Yes.
Do you recall making that phone call to 911?
Yes, I do.
And you recall talking to the dispatcher and remaining on the line until officers arrived?
Yes.
And did officers eventually arrive on scene?
Yes.
When they arrived, do you recall dispatch telling you to leave the residence?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I walked through the house and out of the front door.
Okay. Did you walk back out the garage door where you came in, or did you walk out a different door?
I walked up a different door.
And that was the front door to the house?
Yes.
And were officers waiting there to meet you?
Yes.
And then what happened after you met with officers?
I was put into an ambulance and rushed to the hospital.
Do you recall which hospital you were at?
Felon.
What was the nature of the injuries that you suffered?
There was a severed main artery, several severed tendons and nerves. And that is all that I know.
What about the injury to your chest? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do, and that was just a lesion.
Do you recall what you were wearing that night?
Yes, I was wearing my black khaki pants and my Burger King work shirt.
Joel, do you recall whether or not you had any weapons on your person that night?
Yes,
What did you have?
I had a pocket knife.
Is it typical for you to carry a pocket knife?
Yes.
Do you recall, did you use that knife at all during this incident?
No, I did not.
Do you recall dispatch having a conversation with you about that knife?
Yes.
What was the nature of that conversation?
They asked me if I had any weapons, and I told them that I had my pocket knife, and they told me to take it out of my pocket and leave it in the bathroom.
Did you do that?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at Exhibit 1B9. Can you see that knife in that photograph?
Yes.
Where is it located?
Towards the front left of the drawer.
And 1B10, can you identify what's present in that photograph?
Yes, that is my pocket knife.
It appears to be on a tissue. I don't mean to lead you. I don't know whether that's a tissue or not. Was that white tissue-like object, was that yours, or was that in the drawer?
That was in the drawer.
And again, did you utilize that knife at all during the course of this incident?
No, I did not.
And you did, in fact, leave it there to be recovered or photographed by law enforcement?
Yes.
Joel, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 1B11. Can you indicate what's depicted in that photograph?
That is mine and Sabrina's room.
Okay. And which room of the home is that located in?
That was downstairs in the basement, the first door on the right.
And that's where the two of you stayed together?
Yes.
Don't mean any offense by this, but it's kind of messy. Is that sort of the normal state of affairs in that room?
Yes.
Joel, I'm going to ask you to identify Exhibit 12. Can you indicate what's depicted in that photograph?
That is one of our windows.
Yeah, I'm going to return to photograph number 11. The window in 12, is that photograph present on this photograph, photograph 11?
Yes.
And which window is it?
That would be that one.
So I believe you're pointing to the top left-hand side of photograph 11. Is that accurate?
Yes.
in number 11, that window is covered, is that right?
Yes.
I'm going to return to photograph 12. It appears that there is some grass or plants on the bottom of that, and it appears that the window is broken. To the best of your recollection, prior to June 7th, 2016, did the window area look like that?
No.
Was it broken to your knowledge at all?
No.
Joel, you indicated that you were wearing your Burger King shirt that night. I'm going to ask you to take a look at photograph 1B13. What's depicted in that photograph?
That is my work shirt.
That's the shirt you were wearing on the night of this incident?
Yes.
Now, Joel, I know this might be difficult, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this might be difficult, but I'm going to show you some photographs that depict your injury, okay?
Yes.
I'm showing you 1B14. Do you know what's depicted in that photograph?
That is my arm.
Is that what it looked like after the incident with Mr. Cayer on June 7th of 2016?
Yes.
And I think you indicated that the knife went directly through your arm. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Is there a hole on the other side that's not depicted on this photograph?
Yes.
And that required surgical intervention?
Yes.
Joel, I'm showing you 1B15. What's depicted in that photograph?
My chest and face?
Does that photograph accurately depict the injury to your chest?
Yes.
And in 1B16, can you describe what's in that photograph?
The wound on my chest?
And again, does that accurately depict the injury that you suffered in this incident?
Yes.
And you indicated what treatment was required for that injury?
I had to go under for surgery, and they sewed my arm back together, and I had 3 stitches in my chest.
Okay. Joel, as we were having our conversation here today, you're talking to the jury about what happened to you. You called the defendant Cayer. Did you know Jacob Cayer by first and last name on June 7th of 2016?
No, I did not.
Did you know his last name?
No.
You did know his first name, though?
Yes.
Had you met him previously?
Once.
Where did that occur?
At Walmart?
Do you know about when that was?
About a month prior to June 7th.
And what was the nature of that meeting?
Him and Sabrina got into an argument about something, and then we left after that.
I presume at some point, based on that argument and your follow-up conversation with Sabrina, you learned that his name was Jake and that he was Sabrina's ex-boyfriend?
Yes.
When Mr. Cayer jumped out of that laundry room, did you immediately recognize him as Sabrina's ex-boyfriend?
No, I did not.
When did you come to recognize him more specifically that night?
When she called his name out.
So Sabrina actually called him Jake during the incident?
Yes.
And then based on what she said and then your subsequent observations, you're able to determine that it was her ex-boyfriend, Jake?
Yes.
Did Mr. Cayer say anything to you while this attack was happening?
No.
Anything at all?
No.
Could you see his face when he came out of the laundry room?
Yes.
And what was he wearing?
I believe a black t-shirt, a hat, and jeans.
The hat, was it like a baseball cap or what was it?
Like a stocking cap.
And what color was the hat?
Black.
But his face was not covered.
No.
You were able to see it clearly?
Yes.
What did it look like?
Plain.
And again, to the best of your knowledge, Mr. Cayer had never been to that house while you were living there?
No.
And the only time you ever met him was at that Walmart incident earlier?
Yes.
Joel, do you recall talking to law enforcement after you were brought to the hospital?
Yes.
you know about how many times you talked to law enforcement?
I believe 3 different times.
How soon after the incident did that occur?
About right before I went into the surgery, so about half an hour
Half an hour after what?
after the incident.
Half hour after the incident, or half an hour after you got to the hospital?
After the incident.
And then, did you talk to law enforcement subsequent times at the hospital again?
Yes.
In preparation for the court here today, do you have an opportunity to review any of the statements or the information that you had provided to law enforcement?
Yes.
And did you note anything about that information that you provided to law enforcement that was consistent or inconsistent with what you said today?
Yes, they were inconsistent.
Were they substantially inconsistent?
No.
Do you recall some of the inconsistencies?
No, I do not, but just certain wordings and certain sayings were different than other statements.
The information that you provided to the jury today, is that the information that you remember to the best of your ability?
Yes.
And do you recall emotionally what you were like when you got to the hospital?
I was scared, in pain, still terrified.
Do you remember what shoes you were wearing when you came to the residence that day?
No, I do not.
Do you remember if you took your shoes off prior to going into the house?
Yes, I did.
Do you know where?
On the porch leading to the door.
Was that typical?
Yes.
Was it a no shoes house generally?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you just 2 last photographs. 1B17. I asked you to take a look at that photograph in 1B17. There's a shoe, or what appears to be a shoe, in that photograph. To the best of your recollection, is that your shoe?
No.
Do you know if that was Sabrina's shoe? Did you ever see her wearing that shoe?
I do not think so.
I'm just going to show you 1B18's close-up of that same shoe. Does that change your opinion at all, whether that was yours or Sabrina's?
No.
Just a brief follow-up, Joel. Do you recall, are you able to have any specific recollection of where Mr. Cayer stabbed Sabrina?
No, I believe all over.
Did you see him stab her multiple times?
Yes.
And Joel, I want to ask you one last question. It's probably a little bit uncomfortable, but have you ever been convicted of a crime before?
Yes.
How many times?
Once.
All right. I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Cotton?
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You were asked about...
All right. We just need a minute to figure out those microphones.
Is that coming through okay?
Did you have sound on your computer at all?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. It seems like it's better.
Okay. Good morning, sir. You were asked questions about by the prosecutor about inconsistent statements. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you said that your statements were inconsistent. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Meaning that you gave 3 different statements to the police. Is that what you said?
Yes.
And then we have a fourth statement here in court, right?
Yes.
And actually, more statements were made because you prepared with the district attorney's office for trial, right?
Yes.
In other words, you sat down with them and discussed what you would testify to.
Yes.
Okay. And you've talked to others about this over time as the years have gone by, fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. People have wanted to know what happened, and you've shared what's happened, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, regarding the inconsistent statements, were you, I would just want to explore that a little bit further. I'm holding up here something that, does this look familiar? Can you see from where you're sitting?
Yes.
What am I holding? What do I appear to be holding up?
That is the first statement.
Your first statement.
Yes.
Meaning,
I think I'm going to need you to approach and have them identify that.
Okay. okay. I mean, I'd introduce it.
Yes, that is my first statement.
So do you want to mark that?
Not really. You want to do it,
I think it should mark it when I'm trying to identify something.
This was your, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? And this was the statement that 10:17 p.m., you would agree with that?
Yes.
And you recognize your signature on it?
Yes.
So that scribble over here?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's been marked as exhibit number 2?
Yes. Now, you had a chance to look at this statement again when you were preparing for trial with the district attorney's office, fair to say?
Yes.
And that's when you noticed inconsistencies, right?
Yes.
Because you were rereading this and also thinking back on what you remembered, right?
Yes.
And it's fair to say 4 years, a little bit more than 4 years have gone by since the incident, right?
Yes.
Now, this statement was produced while you were at St. Vincent's Hospital, right?
Yes.
And when you had those wounds that we had seen in the pictures, right?
Yes.
So, and it's only one page, right?
Yes.
I'd like to talk to you about some of the inconsistencies, okay? First of all, you've testified today that about what happened, right?
Yes.
And it's your version that Jacob was responsible for this, right?
Yes.
And we agree you came in through the garage. At least that's your testimony. You came in through the garage, right?
Yes.
And if we orient ourselves with the pictures, I believe you'd come into the kitchen. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And today you testified that Sabrina your recollection is that Sabrina walked down to the bathroom and noticed her mother, right?
Yes.
And in your written statement, you had indicated me and Sabrina entered the bathroom. Would you agree with that?
I guess I'm going to object to the extent that we very briefly had the opportunity to see that statement through plexiglass.
Well, I would just say if he doesn't, we'll refresh his recollection as we ordinarily would. I'm asking if he recalls.
Let me ask you to state the question, because frankly, the question was a bit convoluted, and depending on how one interprets that question.
In your written statement, you said, when me and Sabrina entered the bathroom, we saw blood everywhere. Would you agree that you made that written statement?
Yes, I do.
And today you've testified that Sabrina was the one who entered the bathroom, not you. Fair to say?
Yes.
So that's one inconsistency, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you, in your written statement, you stated that, quote, Jake started attacking me with the knife. I fell to the floor. You remember that?
Yes.
And today you've testified that Sabrina was the first one who was attacked by Jake. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
That's another inconsistency, right?
Yes.
And after Jake attacked, in your written statement, you say that Sabrina was attacked second, right?
Yes.
Okay, but the way you're remembering it today is that Sabrina was attacked first and then you were attacked second.
Yes.
I want to try to understand a little bit more clearly what happened in this, or what you say happened. You had been dating Sabrina since at least, I think, December-ish of 2015, right?
Yes.
And the two of you met however you met, and you moved into her house fairly quickly, right?
Yes.
Is that because you had no place else to live, or you just immediately had a very close relationship?
We had a close relationship.
And the bedroom we saw the pictures of downstairs was where the two of you would reside, right?
Yes.
And you would agree that Sabrina's mother, Heesun, did not want you living in the house. Would you agree with that?
No.
You don't agree with that?
No.
Well, she was upset that you were, when you moved into the house, wasn't she?
No, she was not.
Was she happy that you moved into the house?
She was indifferent.
But you weren't working when you moved in, right?
No.
Meaning, correct, you didn't have a job when you first moved in, right?
Yes.
And no source of income when you moved into the house, right?
Yes.
Sabrina was working. She was at Perkins, right?
Yes.
So you're not working, Sabrina is working.
Yes.
And you're living in the house.
Yes.
And so to the extent you're eating and having shelter, that's because it's being provided to you within that home, right?
Yes.
But it's your testimony that Heesun, or Sonny as we'll call her, was indifferent to that.
Yes.
Okay. You didn't have any conflict with her about moving in and eating their food and living off them?
No.
Is it your testimony that Sonny liked you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you did have a knife on you, right?
Yes.
Why did you carry a knife with you?
I used them at work.
You worked at Burger King?
Yes.
And we saw a picture of that knife. Looks like a black folding knife, fair to say?
Yes.
Is that a work-issued knife?
No.
So you would carry that at Burger King while you worked?
Yes.
And then you would carry it in your pocket after you left Burger King?
Yes.
What was your job at Burger King?
I did everything.
Cook burgers?
Cook burgers, take orders, make the food, take out the garbage,
And which of those jobs did you require the knife for?
breaking down boxes.
Okay, so if you had to break down a box, you had a knife for that.
Yeah.
And would you agree that this knife has a blade, right? We can't see it in the picture, but there would be a blade in there, right?
Yes.
And would you agree you also carry that knife with you for protection if you need it?
Yes.
Okay. It's not just, you didn't just get the knife for purposes of breaking down boxes at Burger King, right?
Yeah.
Right? The knife has other purposes if you need it, right?
Yes.
If someone attacks you, you have a knife available to repel the attack.
Yes.
Now, in the 6 months or so that you had been at this house, you never once saw Jake there, right?
No, I did not.
And would be completely unexpected to see Jake in the house that night, right?
Yes.
There's no reason for him to be there.
Yes.
No conflict had happened earlier that day that would cause him to be there.
No.
Sabrina picked you up from work and you guys went to Walmart to get some food, right?
Yes.
So in terms of what you were doing, it was as uneventful as an evening as you could imagine, right?
Yes.
Similarly, there had been no conflict between Jacob and Sonny.
Yes.
So you weren't aware of any conflict between the two of them where there was bad blood between him and Sonny.
No, I was not.
And again, during the 6 or 7 months, never once saw Jake at that house, right? Until you say the night of the stabbing.
Correct.
Now, and it's just so we're clear, you did have a cell phone at that time, right?
Yes.
And the police took that cell phone and did whatever they did with it, right?
Yes.
In fact, you gave permission for them to analyze it if they wanted, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you had had that phone for maybe a month or so, or a month or 2 months before this incident, would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And that phone would contain text messages, phone call history, things like that.
Yes.
And you also had a Facebook account, right?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that in your phone, you would access YouTube from your phone?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that the same day of this incident, you searched on YouTube?
I'm going to object because we have a motion on this issue and talk about it very fast.
It's up to you. We can approach first, and if you want to excuse the jury, we can.
So I think for purposes of the record, there's a relevance objection. I'm going to overrule the objection.
My question for you was whether you were able to access YouTube also from your phone, right?
Yes.
And you would do that periodically?
Yes.
And the same day of this stabbing, you had searched the phrase famous last words. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
In fact, that was the last thing you searched right before the stabbing.
Yes.
And you were asked about that by the district attorney's office in preparation for this trial, weren't you?
Yes.
And you told them that it's a music video that you like,
Yes.
called Famous Last Words.
Yes, it is a musical group.
What's the video about?
I don't recall.
Wait for a moment, sir.
Said he doesn't recall.
Well, I was going to sustain the objection, but is there any additional questions you tend to ask on that issue?
No.
Then I don't think I need to worry about the answer. It's already in the record. All right.
Now, so we've already talked about Exhibit 2, which is your written statement, right?
Yes.
Which was written by law enforcement because you weren't in a position to write this, right?
Yes.
And you were also interviewed on video. You remember when they filmed you and interviewed you?
I do not.
Okay. Are you aware as you sit here today that you were video filmed as you made a statement?
Yes.
You know that, right?
Yes.
And you know that because the state and the prosecutors have shown you your video to show you what you said, right? Or is that not accurate?
That is not accurate.
Okay. How do you know you were filmed on? How do you know you were filmed? Did somebody provide you a copy of your tape?
No, but I was informed.
By who?
I believe Lieutenant Van Lannon.
Okay. And that's he's here in court at the end of the prosecutor's table with the shaved head, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you watch that tape with him in preparation for your testimony?
No.
No? He just told you that there was one, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, you talked about an event at Walmart where you had run into Jacob at some point before this, right?
Yes.
But Sabrina never told you that Jacob would want to hurt her, right?
No, she did not.
She never said Jacob was dangerous.
No, I don't believe so.
That's something you would have remembered if she had told you that, right?
Yes.
So she never says he's dangerous, never says he'd want to hurt her, but you did have conversations about him because you saw him at Walmart, right?
Yes.
And that was about a month or so before the incident?
Yes.
Now during this stabbing event, it's your testimony that Jacob is the one who did this, right? That's your testimony?
Yes.
And that he didn't say anything before or after the attack, right?
Yes.
No words.
No words at all.
And I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that you described how his face looked. Didn't they ask you how his face looked?
Yes.
And you said plain, right?
Yes.
Would another word for that be expressionless?
Yes.
Meaning, didn't look angry, you couldn't get any read out of it, could you?
Correct.
Nor are there any words being said, so that doesn't help you at all either, right?
Correct.
And let's go with what you remember today, your testimony, is that the initial confrontation happens in the kitchen area, right?
Yes.
Which, it's either Sabrina first or you first, depending on the written statement or today's testimony, right?
Yes.
But eventually, all three of you make it to the garage, right?
Yes.
And you first, right? You were the first one to go in the garage.
Yes.
And it's your testimony, Jacob just jumped out of the laundry room unexpectedly and started attacking Sabrina, right?
Yes.
You got into the garage.
Yes.
And then didn't keep running outside the home, right?
Correct.
Just stayed in the garage until Sabrina and Jake came out the door.
Yes.
And I'm trying to understand how it unfolded. You're watching as the two of them are struggling coming down those steps, right?
Yes.
And that's when you grabbed that shovel that we saw and you hit Jacob in the head with the shovel. That's your testimony?
Yes.
And in fact, Jacob fell to the ground. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And Sabrina got on top of him.
I don't believe so.
So Jacob's on the ground and Sabrina is standing.
I believe she was on the ground as well.
And it's your testimony that you've, at this point, already been stabbed through the arm, right?
Yes.
And which arm were you stabbed in?
This one.
Okay. So then you run into the kitchen and you lock Sabrina and Jacob in the garage.
No. I did not lock the door.
Okay. You ran in and just closed the door.
Yes.
And left them out there.
Yes.
Why, if you made it to the garage, why didn't you just keep running out of the house?
I don't recall.
You would have had to have run, under this version, Jacob and Sabrina come down those steps. They're fighting right there in front of the stairs. You would have had to have run right past them to go back through the door into the kitchen. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's what you believe you did?
Yes.
And in fact, the garage door was even open at that time, wasn't it?
I do not believe it was.
Now, you go back inside. It's your testimony you don't lock that door, but you run down the hallway and you go into Heesun's bedroom, right?
Yes.
And you lock that door.
Yes.
And then you lock the bathroom door also?
Yes.
So now you've barricaded yourself behind two more locked doors, right?
Yes.
Now, you've identified Mr. Cayer here in court today when we all removed our masks, right?
Yes.
And you were close enough, you say, to see his face. You said he did the stabbing, right?
Yes.
You told the police that the person had shoulder-length hair. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And that the person was not wearing any mask at all, right?
Yes.
Okay. No attempt to conceal one's face whatsoever.
Correct.
And no facial hair, right?
No, he had facial hair.
Okay. Do you remember facial hair?
Yes.
Were you present in court when your 911 call was played?
No, I was not.
Have you had a chance to listen to your 911 call prior to your testimony?
Yes.
You would agree that in the 911 call, you were asked whether there was any facial hair, and you said, not that I saw.
I do not recall.
And you don't remember what you said on that call, right?
What do you mean?
About facial hair, you don't recall what you said.
No.
But that 911 call is you trying to describe everything you're seeing at the time, right?
Yes.
Is it your testimony that you believe you were stabbed in the kitchen area? That's where you remember being stabbed?
Yes.
Before you went into the garage area, right?
Yes.
And did you ever, you had your knife in your pocket this whole time, right?
Yes.
And it's your testimony you never utilized that knife in any way, right?
Correct.
Why didn't you pull the knife out to fend off the perpetrator?
I didn't think about it.
When you were, 1 minute please, Your Honor. I want to just ask a few more questions, touch on a couple other things with you, sir. Going back to Sonny, the mother, liking you, are you aware that Sabrina had a sister, Sarah Mae?
Yes.
And did you have contact and interaction with Sarah Mae?
Not that I can recall.
Were you aware of the mother's boyfriend, Raymond? Is that somebody you were familiar with?
Yes.
Sonny had a boyfriend named Raymond, right?
Yes.
And were you aware of anything Sonny had said to Raymond about not liking you?
Sustained.
That's all I hear her say. Yeah, I know. Going to the interview you did with the police at the hospital, you would agree that your written statement is a much shorter version than what was discussed over the 30 minutes or so that you talked to the officers, right?
Yes.
In other words, you were getting medical treatment and they were present talking to you during that time, right?
Yes.
And they were trying to understand what you believe happened in the what you saw in the house, right? That was the whole point of the questioning.
Yes.
And do you remember an officer named Officer Ehrenstein? Is that somebody that you're familiar with?
I do not recall, no.
Do you know the names of the officers who were interviewing you?
No.
Would you agree that you told the officers that the last time you saw Sabrina, she was in the garage on top of Jacob holding him down? Do you remember telling the officers that?
No, I do not.
As you sit here today, it's your recollection that she wasn't holding him down, he was just down on the ground, and that's when you ran from the garage?
Correct.
If you had a shovel and you had knocked him down to the ground, why would you just run into the house and not keep hitting the person?
I don't know.
That's all, thank you.
Any redirect?
You were asked about the garage door and whether the garage door was open or closed. When you recall going out to the garage to get the shovel, do you believe the garage door was open or closed at that point?
Closed.
Do you recall actually closing it or someone closing the garage door when you came in?
Yes.
And do you know who did that?
I believe I pushed the button to close it.
All right, and the button to open and close the door, where is that located?
Right next to the door to the kitchen
Okay.
from the garage.
Did you think about opening that door and running out before you went and grabbed the shovel?
No, I did not.
Okay. What was your purpose in grabbing the shovel?
To fight.
And this was sort of described by defense as, well, you've got the shovel and you're standing over there in the corner just watching them struggle. I mean, was this a long period of time that you're standing there with the shovel before they come out the door?
No.
Is it fair to say that, in fact, all of this is happening very quickly?
Yes.
Is it a chaotic scene?
Yes.
So you do recall grabbing the shovel on the side of the garage, and then about how quickly after you went and grabbed the shovel did Jacob and Sabrina come out of the garage?
I'd say about 5 or 10 seconds.
So fairly quickly. They come right out.
Yes.
And then likewise, the physical struggle, that you striking Jacob and then running back in the house, does that happen fairly quickly?
Yes.
It's just a general question. Are there things you would have done differently if you could do this all over again and you had the time to reason your way through how to respond to this attack?
Absolutely.
It's fair to say at that time this was just chaos and you just did what was on instinct.
Yes.
Again, Mr. Cotton showed you a brief written statement. It was 1 page, right?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that everything that happened that night cannot really fairly be encapsulated in 1 page?
Correct.
And he talked to you about some of the inconsistencies, right? He talked to you about who got stabbed first, whether both of you went over to the bathroom to see Heesun in the bathroom. In your mind, is the big picture the vast majority of what happened? Has that been relatively consistent throughout this?
Yes.
Leading questions, Your Honor.
I don't know that I let him. I asked if it was, and he could say yes or no. And
I don't think that was a leading question. I'm going to overrule the objection.
do you know if in every one of your statements you said Mr. Cayer jumped out of the laundry room and attacked you?
I believe so, yes.
The weapon that Mr. Cayer used, do you know if that was consistent in all of your statements?
Yes, I believe so.
Can you tell us a little bit about that knife? Do you remember the knife itself?
Yes, it was, I believe it was a chef's knife.
In terms of the size of the knife, do you remember anything about the size of the knife?
About that big?
Oh, are you familiar with like a standard kitchen knife set?
Yes.
Would this be one of the small knives or one of the large knives?
One of the large knives.
As it compares to your folding knife, was it bigger or smaller?
Much bigger.
Do you recall if in every one of your statements you remember that you struck Mr. Cayer with a shovel?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you recall if in every one of your statements that happened in the garage?
Yes.
Is it possible that in one of the statements that wasn't actually consistent?
I do not believe so.
As you sit here today, where did that contact take place?
In the garage.
And in every one of your statements, do you describe Mr. Cayer as the person who did this?
Yes.
Is there any doubt in your mind that Mr. Cayer is the person who stabbed you and Sabrina?
No.
And you saw him stab Sabrina with your own eyes?
Correct.
Multiple times?
Correct.
Clearly you saw him stab yourself.
Yes.
Again, these are leading questions. I'm objecting because he's giving the answer.
Can you rephrase the question, Mr. Lissay?
I'll withdraw that question. At any point in time, did you see anyone else in the house other than Mr. Cayer, Sabrina, and Heesun?
No.
And to be clear, I'm talking about on the evening of June 7th, 2016.
Correct.
Before law enforcement arrived.
Yes.
No further questions, right?
Any recross?
Are you aware that Sabrina's body was eventually found next to the house? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Outside of the garage, right?
Yes.
So in terms of the garage doors must have been open for Sabrina to get out of the garage, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
Do you know when that garage door became open?
I do not know.
And it's your testimony here today that the garage door was... Do you recall when you were in the garage having contact with Mr. Cayer with the shovel, do you believe it was open or closed?
Closed.
Nothing further.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. You may remove your shield, put it in the basket marked use and then replace your face mask. Thank you. And he's free to go?
That's his perspective, yes. I guess I would,
Yes.
at this point, I would clarify, Mr. Kennedy is clearly indicated as a statutory crime victim.
We don't object to him remaining present if he wishes.
He's released from his subpoena and no longer needs to testify, but you're welcome to stay if you want to watch any portion of the trial.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.